motherfucker trying to turn a fag into a housewife. Stick up!
Episode 122, so it has come to my attention in episode 121, I was double bamboozled. So first of all, way back when, I was like, hey yo motherfucker, I heard a new Argosland album coming out. Shit, that's some good fucking news, right? Everybody likes Argosland. But then, let me tell you what happened. I see this new Argosland album coming out as like a compilation of like splits and EP tracks and fucking whatnot. And I was like, fuck dude, I already own all that shit, what the fuck? And I was like, oh man, there ain't no fucking new Argosland album. Turns out, double tricked, because according to their Weltenfeind website, that shit ain't even the same thing. They're still working on a new album. I don't know, but I don't mind looking like a fucking dummy in this instance. Because that just means I get a new album from one of my favorite bands. So, yeah, that's good. New Argosland. Everybody likes Argosland. Want to say that's probably the biggest episode I ever did for some reason. People starved for Argosland content. I don't know. But,
저는 여기서
what do you mean I gotta do an actual episode? I can't just, like, talk about Argosland. Alright, fine. What have I been listening to lately? Oh, here's a good one. From 1989, the same year as the first Morbid Angel full-length officially released, we have this potent examination of the human condition.
네, 최근에 나온 박진영 제가 굉장히 팬이고요.
What do you mean people don't want to hear my hot takes on this? Look how structurally amazing this album is. Watch right here, he's gonna bring the fucking beat in under these vocals, and he changes up his entire style of delivery to go along with it. This is truly a magnificent work of art. Okay, fine, maybe people won't enjoy me doing commentary on that. How about something a little bit more modern? So this one right here combines ethnic influences with biting social commentary about an issue that has been heavily censored by multiple multinational entities. I think it has a very important message to share with everybody. And I think... Alright, fine, we'll go with something a little bit more traditional here. How about, Carcass? But that's okay, because I have some hot fucking takes on Carcass that you might not have even considered before, alright? These are hot novelty takes. Knowing me from the fucking novelty store. But guess what, everybody? We're not talking about necroticism, we're not talking about heartwork, we're not even talking about the roots of Gorgrind with frickin' reek of putrefaction, or the beginning of highly structured death metal with Symphonies of Sickness. No, we're talking about the one wacky album that no one ever fucking talks about. It's good old Swan Song, everybody.
Wow!
That's right, the last album they put out before their, like, multi-decade hiatus. That last album, it's got Carlo Regatas as second guitarist. Nobody's ever even heard of that guy. And the only thing I can find of note that he played on was this album. There's no Mike Ammett. Conventional wisdom is that this is sort of like a more simplistic and rock-based version of what they were doing on Heartwork, which was already a massive simplification compared to their early material, although I still enjoy Heartwork. It might be my second favorite Carcass album after Necroticism. And I remember when I think the first Carcass album I ever got was I went to a fucking Best Buy in suburban Ohio when I was a little kid and got that fucking Choice Cuts compilation, and I'm listening to it, and you know, I was like this massive fucking nerd. Get those nerds! Back then, and I'm like, I can classify the genres. This one's grindcore, this song right here is fucking death metal, Heartwork is melodic death metal, Swan Song, it's thrash metal, right?
Wrong.
No, it's not thrash metal. It's not really death and roll. It's not groove metal. It's kind of its own thing. It's sort of like a very weird heavy metal album. One of the things I enjoy about a lot of good melodic death metal is that it's heavy metal at heart, but because they're using such an abrasive vocal style, they can play heavy metal, but it's not led around by the vocal melodies. Instead, all the melodies carried by the guitars, and they can do more complex things with the song structure. Carcass sort of take that idea to the extreme here, where this would normally be sort of like a heavy metal album, but because he's still shrieking over it, they can do more interesting things guitar-wise. First song is Keep on Rotting in the Free World. And it shows they got a sense of humor this time around. They're also very negative about the overall state of society, and they're utilizing a lot of negative space here with these guitar chugs leading into silence apart from that kind of breakbeat drum thing there that Ken Elwin's doing. I feel like I probably wouldn't get along if I talked politics with Jeff Walker at all, but we probably have similarly misanthropic outlooks on life, which I can respect. So here we're building up to some sort of chorus right here where they're going to do harmonized guitars under those tambourine beats and catchy little death metal shout-along type shit. But then watch this part. This part fucking pisses me off, man. Look at this. Okay, yeah, what happened to the fucking solo there, fam? Like, fuck off. I don't know. That part always annoyed me because then it just goes right back into the verse again. There's no solo. There's like a solo intro. No solo. I don't know. That part has been bugging me since, when did I hear this? Like 2004 or something? Luckily later on, they build back up to that same sort of kind of verse chorus loop and then into a melodic breakdown. That sort of little linking riff between the verses and the choruses is explored a bit more with Jeff Walker providing some interesting counterpoint with his bass there. Interesting, I can't fucking talk. And then finally with some cowbell, we get into a proper trade-off solo between Regatas and good old Bill Steer. The wah pedal is back from Heartwork, which is good because I always like Carcass with their wacky wah pedal shenanigans. So you really can't knock this album in terms of musicality. But this song definitely is simpler than their earlier work. So if you're looking for more neoclassical, like kind of Heartworky stuff, you might be disappointed. Elsewhere on the album, we got this bouncy little semi-thrash number called Rock the Vote, about how voting doesn't fucking do anything and you're all being deceived. Which, yeah, election year, I could see that. I really dig the main riff in this one. It does kind of a cool, just sort of loop through a minor scale, but it pulls some interesting stuff out of it. Also really good drumming from good old Ken Owen there, keeping it fairly extreme with those double bass blasts, letting you know that this band used to be a death metal band and they're still a lot heavier than your average mainstream kind of heavy metal stuff.
안녕, 나는 촛불부장이야.
That's an interesting point. I don't know if on Corpse Cry Angel Fall, the first song off of Imaginary Sonicscape, Psy was directly inspired. I think that this is a fairly standard sort of thing to do, kind of just run through a minor scale, and it leads to some very similar sounding riffs, all of which I like. You can find plenty of Rock the Vault style riffs all over this Psy album and all over just lots of different albums, but it's worth pointing out the distinct similarity there between the two. But I think my favorite song on this album is actually one kind of stuck in the middle. I've never heard anybody but me talk about this song. It's called Child's Play, and it's very interesting stuff. It's essentially about the interplay between two different kind of styles. The first one is a very groove-heavy, kind of weird, bendy riff with a bit of dissonance to it towards the end of it. They hit sort of what might be seen as like the wrong notes of the scale to give it a stranger, more threatening feeling. Some people might be put off by it, thinking it's a bit too machine head retard groove, but I think the dissonance, I don't know, it's interesting stuff. It reminds me a lot of similar kinds of riffs that happened in post-Ozzy Black Sabbath when Dio was in the band, specifically on Dehumanizer. This one's called Buried Alive, for those interested enough in that album, which I should probably do an episode on at some point because it's a pretty cool piece of work. So you have the weird bendy groove riff, and then it's in an eternal struggle with this very spacious bar chord utilizing riff, which also has a nice little pentatonic figure towards the end of it. But trying to tie these two styles together makes some very interesting stuff. And I enjoy that riff a lot. It reminds me quite a bit of riffs you might hear on that Dehumanizer album. Specifically, this little Tony Iommi number here is called Master of Insanity, but you got bar chord riffs going all the way back through the Black Sabbath catalog. That's what I mean when I see Swan Song as sort of like just a really interesting take on doing a heavy metal album but keeping it very Carcass in style. It utilizes stuff from heavy metal albums of the past and puts their own spin on it, and because it has the Carcassy style vocals over it, they can do more musically interesting things than you could do in a band primarily led by the vocalist. So here we go, here's that groove heavy riff again. But how are we going to go about taking this sort of very street tough kind of nasty groovy shit into that very epic bar chord sort of neoclassical work inspired by two different elements of Black Sabbath and also quite a bit of King Diamond? They actually mentioned him as an influence with the Conspiracy album. Well, here we go. You just slam them right next to each other and it actually works fucking perfectly. So most of this song is just those two styles going back and forth over the course of everything, but as you finally get later into the song, that bar chord part opens up into some even more epic sounding heavy metal, and I don't mean epic like, oh well, epic Reddit, blah blah blah, I'm like actual old school Homerian epic type shit. Here's the part 2 counterpoint to that bar chord riff. Very Carcass, but also very heavy metal, with a nice little Zakk Wylde-esque pinch harmonic in there for good measure. Maybe a bit of a southern groove to it, I don't know. Depends on your point of view, but then watch what it leads into. Look at this part, this like weird walking part reminds me a lot of Black Sabbath. Specifically, again, the post-Ozzy stuff with Dio. It had riffs like this all over the fucking place, and it's done very well by this band. I applaud them for building on an otherwise unexplored facet of old school heavy metal.
분기반장을 잘할 수 있어.
Huh? Oh well shit. Co-host coming up with the crazy fucking novelty take here. This is off of the 2013 Black Sabbath album. And it sounds like a riff that might be on Carcass's Swan Song. There's a lot of S's there. I don't know. Black Sabbath influences Carcass, who then goes on to possibly influence Black Sabbath? Or maybe, if you're British, you're pissed off enough, and you're making this sort of like epic heavy metal, it ends up sounding like that no matter what you do. Musical determinism? I don't fucking know, but I like Swan Song for the reasons I just outlined. It's a just interesting take on kind of older school epic heavy metal. You might even see it as sort of like a very weird, gore-splattered variant of a power metal album, or even like some kind of Led Zeppelin-y like boogie rock thing at times, but it's well worth investigating. So I'm sure we can all name tens of thousands of bands that were influenced by the other eras of Carcass. Like, most of the gore grind comes from Reek of Putrefaction, tons of death metal's influenced by Symphonies of Sickness and Necroticism. Quite a bit of melodic death metal wouldn't exist without Heartwork. What did Swan Song influence, you know, since it's kind of like the weird bastard stepchild of the old school Carcass discography? Well, I can think of one band from Denmark, the rather unjustly forgotten Ill Disposed, who were one of the oldest death metal bands in the countries and had a very original style. On this, their third album, you hear these kind of neoclassical solos being mixed with some very fucking heavy groove riffs and a frankly bizarre sense of humor. That has the fingerprints of Swan Song all over it, I would say. Let me check this part out here. So they've retained that sort of like alternating shrieky and growly vocal style. Here comes some shrieks. That was in the older Carcass stuff, but they've combined it with the super groove heavy stuff off of Swan Song. So Ill Disposed definitely has some Swan Song influence. In Japan, they were really into the melodic Carcass stuff. I mean, Arch Enemy started out pretty much as like a band to sell to the Japanese, and that of course is a post-Carcass project of Michael Amott. They were on the old Toys Factory label and whatnot. But Swan Song also, despite lukewarm reception over in the States, very well received there. I mean, check out this Rock the Vote style riffage from Shadow on their first self-titled album, Shadow. Great melodic death metal band. This one's called The Arrival at Last Quarter. And this sounds exceptionally fucking Carcassy. These guys, check them out. They're also pretty influenced by Deceased from Virginia. But this song in particular reeks of fucking Swan Song in the most wonderful way. And it's really good stuff. So maybe if more people were more open to what was going on Swan Song, we would get more cool sounding stuff like this. I would not be opposed to it. Of course, this album also has a fair amount of black metal mixed into it, which isn't very Carcassy, but is in fact super fucking cool, so I'm not going to complain. That first Shadow album, the third Ill Disposed album, you know, there's a few bands out there that picked up on what Carcass was putting down with Swan Song. So I would say overall that album is not necessarily the failure it is often made out to be. If you come to it with the right mindset that it's sort of like an interesting, weird, heavy metal album, as opposed to like a sellout version of Heartwork, who a lot of people already see as a sellout from Necroticism, who a lot of people already see as a sellout from fucking Symphonies. People get really fucking passionate about which era of Carcass they enjoy. And I enjoy all of them, including the Swan Song one. So hopefully with that in mind, you might be able to go into Swan Song with some new ideas, new way of looking at it, and end up enjoying it as much as I do. It's certainly a long enough album. It's got a fuckload of songs on it, and there's like 5 unreleased songs that are available on different compilations from the same sessions, so you definitely can't accuse them of lacking inspiration when it came to them making that album. They had ideas fucking flying out all over the place. I'll leave you with that. Swan Song, good album. Check it out. See you next week. Bye.
ぜひぜひお願いします。バイバーイ。
This sexy got stuck just about done making this YouTube video. Dank ass burgers, dank ass pizza, dank ass French fries, and dank ass nachos. My primary focus on my channel is pizza and burgers.
There's a lot of idiots for Catholic.